Alright, let's talk about a special kind of pain. The kind where you start a game, and for the first few hours, it feels like watching paint dry in slow motion. You sit there thinking, why am I doing this? Why did I spend money on this? Am I just bad at games? But then, out of nowhere, it clicks. The story grabs you, the combat gets insanely fun, and suddenly you're completely hooked, wondering how you almost gave up on what turns out to be one of the best gaming experiences ever. Today we're looking at 20 games that start off boring but finish stronger than my willpower to resist Steam sales. So, if you've ever rage quit a game too soon, don't worry, you might have just abandoned a masterpiece. Let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about the first few hours of Red Dead Redemption 2, a thrilling adventure where you learn the art of riding a horse very slowly through an endless blizzard. I started this game expecting gunfights, train robberies, and epic cowboy moments, but instead, I found myself bonding with my horse and learning how to make coffee over a campfire. It was like Rockstar wanted me to experience the real struggles of a cowboy. Frostbite, exhaustion, and listening to Dutch ramble about a plan that sounded suspiciously like nonsense. But once you break free from the snow-covered intro, the game turns into one of the greatest open-world experiences ever made. One minute you're peacefully fishing, the next you're in a full-blown shootout because you accidentally brushed against the wrong guy in a saloon. And don't even get me started on the emotional roller coaster. By the end, I was sitting there, controller in hand, questioning my own morality and life choices. You come for the cowboy action, but stay for the heartbreak and existential crisis.
It is over. Now. Arthur. It's over. Oh, Dutch. He's right. You know it, and I know it.
He's sick. He's dying. He's talking crazy.
I have never felt more like a glorified Amazon delivery guy than in the first few hours of Death Stranding. Norman Reedus in the walking simulator had me trudging across miles of rocky terrain, carrying cargo like I was starring in a reality show called Extreme UPS Apocalypse Edition. Every step felt like I was one bad rock away from eating dirt, and I started wondering if Kojima had actually just scammed me into playing the world's most intense hiking simulator. But then, the game starts pulling you into its insane story, and before you know it, you're dodging ghostly creatures, riding a futuristic motorcycle, and delivering packages like your life depends on it. Because it literally does. The combat gets intense, the plot twists get ridiculous, and somehow you end up forming deep emotional connections with NPCs who only communicate through emails. By the end, I wasn't just delivering boxes, I was delivering hope, emotions, and the occasional pizza. Seriously, that's a mission. Death Stranding goes from, why am I playing this, to this might be one of the most unique and unforgettable games I've ever played.
Touchy-feely there, Mr. Phasmophobia. Well, congratulations. You won the game.
At first, I thought Doki Doki Literature Club was just a cute anime dating sim where I'd have to pick which literature-loving girl was going to pretend to like me. The first hour is filled with happy music, sweet dialogue, and innocent poetry writing. I was just sitting there thinking, okay, when does the action start? Is this just High School Simulator 2017? And then, out of absolutely nowhere, the game yanks the rug out from under you and throws you into one of the most disturbing psychological horror experiences I've ever had. It's like going on a date and suddenly realizing you're in a horror movie. The game messes with your head, your choices, and even your actual game files, like, excuse me, why is this anime girl deleting my save data? By the time I finished, I wasn't sure if I had played a game or if the game had played me. If you haven't tried it yet, go in blind. Trust me, it's an experience you'll never forget, even if you want to. When I started Dragon Age Inquisition, I thought I had accidentally booted up Medieval Errand Simulator. The first few hours were all about picking flowers, fetching boring quests, and wondering why everyone kept treating me like the world's most powerful hero, when all I had done so far was collect elf fruit like an unpaid fantasy botanist. I was ready to quit when suddenly, bam! The story slaps you in the face with political drama, romance, betrayal, and dragons. One moment I was wandering aimlessly through fields, and the next, I was making life or death decisions that had massive consequences. The game goes from, do I really have to talk to this guy again, to, I must protect my allies, defeat my enemies, and reshape the fate of the entire world. Before I knew it, I was deep in an 80-hour epic, passionately debating which of my companions I trusted the most, and realizing that no decision was truly the right one. By the time the credits rolled, I had built an army, fought legendary beasts, and made tough choices that I still regret. And somehow, I also spent way too much time flirting with my party members. Priorities.
As you wish.
The first few hours of Days Gone had me feeling like I was trapped in a never-ending tutorial about fuel conservation and bike repair. Oh, you want to fight zombies? Too bad, your motorcycle is out of gas again. At first, the world felt empty. The pacing was slow, and I kept wondering why Deacon St. John insisted on mumbling entire conversations to himself like he was starring in his own private soap opera. But then, the game finally lets you loose, and everything changes. The open world starts feeling alive, well, undead. The horde mechanics become absolutely terrifying, and the story sneaks up on you with surprisingly emotional twists. Suddenly, I wasn't just a grumpy biker avoiding zombies. I was leading massive fights, taking down entire camps, and desperately trying to keep my motorcycle in one piece while outrunning hundreds of flesh-eating maniacs. By the time I finished, I was completely hooked and wondering why more people didn't talk about this game. It might start slow, but when Days Gone picks up, it doesn't let go.
I don't want to kill that old man. I did it. He gave me no fucking choice. I tried to make him see peace, but he just fucking wouldn't. He just fucking wouldn't. Killed me real bad. Huh? Followed me all the way back here.
Grenade! Come on!
It's you. Oh yeah, you came back for your girl. I got bad news for you, Deacon St. John.
Starting Disco Elysium felt like waking up after the worst hangover of my life, only to realize I was, in fact, a complete disaster of a human being. The game throws you into the role of a detective who has the investigative skills of a wet sock and the self-control of a raccoon in a garbage can. My first few hours consisted of failing to put on my own pants, getting into philosophical debates with my own brain, and trying to figure out why my tie was possessed. I was genuinely confused about whether I was solving a murder or just slowly losing my mind in the most entertaining way possible. But then, out of nowhere, Disco Elysium reveals itself as one of the smartest, deepest, and most brilliantly written games I've ever played. The choices matter, the dialogue is pure gold, and somehow it made me feel emotionally attached to my completely broken mess of a character. By the end, I wasn't just solving a case, I was questioning everything I knew about myself, society, and whether or not I should have punched that one guy in the face back in hour 2.
Rudimentary behavior from before the parthenogenetic mutation.
That makes sense. Yes.
Very interesting. Such organisms are extremely vulnerable to disease. A single strain of bacteria could wipe out the whole species. We're probably looking at conservation efforts here.
Yes, but also red-colored, beige and brown, a little green on the outside. After unfolding from a single stalk, it still retained parts that looked like reed tufts on its limbs.
The first couple of hours in Outer Wilds had me flying my rickety little spaceship straight into planets, black holes, and occasionally my own sense of impending doom. The game just tosses you into the galaxy with almost zero explanation and expects you to figure things out like some kind of space detective. Oh, what's that? A mysterious signal? Boom, I'm dead. Maybe I should land carefully this time. Boom, I'm dead again. But once you start uncovering the mysteries of the universe, it becomes one of the most mind-blowing, emotional, and beautifully crafted games ever made. Every loop reveals something new, and just when you think you've got it all figured out, the game pulls the rug from under you with revelations that make your brain melt. By the end, I was sitting in stunned silence, contemplating the nature of time, existence, and why I ever thought I was good at flying spaceships. Next game on the list is No Man's Sky, the game that went from, this is kind of boring to, wait, this is actually amazing, over the course of several hours and years of updates. When I first started, I was stranded on some toxic nightmare of a planet, slowly dying while trying to collect resources and wondering why everything in my inventory was full. The game basically said, here, enjoy endless space exploration, but forgot to mention the part where I'd spend 90% of my time trying to figure out how not to suffocate. But once I got the hang of things, No Man's Sky transformed into one of the most immersive and rewarding space adventures ever. Suddenly, I was building bases, discovering strange alien creatures, and warping across the galaxy like I was in my own sci-fi movie. It went from I'm lost and confused to I am the Space King real quick, and I loved every second of it. The first time I played Mass Effect, I nearly quit because I spent more time getting lost in the Normandy's menus than actually saving the galaxy. The combat felt clunky, the Mako controlled like a shopping cart with 3 broken wheels, and the Citadel? Oh boy, that place was basically a giant alien DMV. I had no idea where I was going half the time. But then, the game does what BioWare does best. It hits you with incredible characters, impossible choices, and a story that makes you feel like a legendary space hero. Before I knew it, I was fully invested, making life or death decisions, forming deep bonds with my crew, and shouting at my screen when things didn't go my way. By the end, I wasn't just playing Mass Effect, I was Commander Shepard, and this was my favorite game on the Citadel. At first, Horizon Zero Dawn felt like one of those just another open world game situations. You start as young Aloy, running around, throwing rocks, and learning how to hunt robotic deer like it's Survival School 101. The intro drags a little, and I'll be honest, at first I wasn't sure if it was going to be anything special, but once the world opens up and you finally get access to all the cool weapons and abilities, Horizon Zero Dawn turns into one of the most breathtaking, action-packed, and surprisingly emotional games I've ever played. Sneaking through the tall grass, overriding massive robotic monsters, and piecing together the story of what happened to humanity, absolute gold. By the end, I was so hooked that I couldn't stop until I uncovered every secret, climbed every tall neck, and proved to the world that yes, fighting robot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow is just as cool as it sounds. When I first booted up Fable 2, I thought I had accidentally started a medieval version of The Sims. I was running around as a kid, doing odd jobs, getting bullied by random villagers, and making decisions that seemed about as impactful as choosing between vanilla or chocolate ice cream. Oh boy, I sure hope helping this guy find his lost chicken changes the fate of Albion. Spoiler alert, it does not. But then, Fable 2 goes full throttle, and suddenly I'm a powerful hero with magic shooting out of my hands, slashing through bandits, buying real estate like a fantasy version of Jeff Bezos, and making morally questionable choices that I totally did not regret. The story ramps up, the humor gets sharper, and by the end, I was completely invested in the fate of my kingdom, mostly because I owned half of it. Next, let's talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance, the game that taught me that being a medieval peasant was not as fun as Hollywood made it seem. The first few hours, pure struggle. I couldn't fight, I couldn't read, and I was somehow failing at simply walking without tripping over things. My first attempt at sword fighting looked like I was trying to swat a bee with a pool noodle. Even the game's save system was out to get me. But once I got over the brutal learning curve and actually started understanding the mechanics, Kingdom Come became one of the most immersive RPG experiences I've ever had. The world is rich, the story is gripping, and by the end, I had gone from a clueless peasant to a full-fledged warrior who actually knew how to hold a sword without embarrassing myself. It's like Dark Souls, but instead of fighting dragons, you're struggling to put on pants properly.
Beszarás, és pont amikor kedvem lenne...
I'm going to enjoy this. Fuck! I'll have you.
At first, Spec Ops: The Line seemed like every generic military shooter ever made. I was running through sand-covered Dubai, shooting bad guys, and thinking, alright, this is Call of Duty with extra dust. But oh no, this game had plans for me. Slowly but surely, it starts messing with my head. The moral choices get darker, the story takes a very disturbing turn, and suddenly, I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about being the hero in a war game. By the time I reached the gut-wrenching ending, I wasn't even sure I wanted to finish. It's like Spec Ops reached through the screen, smacked me in the face, and whispered, "War is bad, you fool." If I could go back in time and tell my past self, hey, you're about to have an existential crisis over a video game, I would. And I'd probably also warn myself about that one scene. You know the one.
There. Finished. I hope you like it.
What the hell is going on?
Your eyes are opening for the first time. It hurts, doesn't it? Go on. What do you think?
I started Elden Ring the same way I start every From Software game, by dying immediately to something ridiculous. Within the first 10 minutes, I got absolutely obliterated by a tree sentinel who looked like he had been waiting specifically for me to show up so he could ruin my day. The first few hours were filled with pure suffering. Every enemy was out for blood, I kept getting lost, and I still had no idea what half my stats even did. But then, slowly, the magic of Elden Ring kicks in. The exploration is breathtaking, the world is hauntingly beautiful, and every boss fight feels like an epic battle straight out of a legend. By the end, I was no longer the clueless tarnished getting smacked around. I was a god-slaying warrior who had conquered the lands between. Also, I may or may not have spent an embarrassing amount of time just messing around on my spectral horse, but that's beside the point. Look, I love Vikings as much as the next person, but the start of Assassin's Creed Valhalla had me feeling like I accidentally signed up for a longboat tour of Norway instead of an action-packed adventure. The opening drags on, the game throws a lot of mechanics at you, and I was still figuring out how to make my character stop looking like they were running around in circles. But once you actually get to England and start raiding villages like a true Norse warrior, Valhalla becomes ridiculously fun. The combat is brutal, the world is massive, and before I knew it, I was spending hours building my settlement, hunting legendary beasts, and throwing axes at unsuspecting enemies just because I could. The story takes its sweet time getting interesting, but by the end, I was fully invested in Eivor's journey. Also, I may have spent too much time in the drinking minigames, but hey, when in Viking land, do as the Vikings do. Cyberpunk 2077, the game that launched with more bugs than a cheap motel but somehow still managed to become one of the most immersive RPGs out there. The first few hours? Confusing. I was stuck doing menial jobs, getting yelled at by NPCs, and listening to Johnny Silverhand insult me like I owed him money. Meanwhile, half the time my car was either floating in the air or getting stuck in the pavement. But once I got past the cyber chaos and the game actually started working the way it was supposed to, it was a wild ride. The story pulls you in, the city is stunning, and the combat goes from clunky to I am a cybernetic ninja who can hack someone's brain while doing backflips. By the end, I was so emotionally invested in V's journey that I forgot all about the time my character randomly T-posed through a cutscene.
Details have been sent.
I'll be honest, at first Life is Strange felt like I had accidentally walked into an indie film festival and couldn't find the exit. The dialogue was trying so hard to be hip and cool that I almost cringed my way into another dimension. Wow, Max, that's hella cool. Please make it stop. But then, oh no, the story got me. The time travel mechanics started to click, the mystery kept pulling me deeper, and suddenly I was emotionally attached to these characters like they were my childhood best friends. By the end, I was making heartbreaking choices that left me staring at the screen, questioning my entire existence. It started slow, but by the time it was over, Life is Strange had me in a chokehold, and I was fully on board with the emotional roller coaster. Also, I totally regret some of my choices, but there's no rewind button in real life, so here we are.
Wrong. You got hella cash.
That's my family, not me.
Oh, boo-hoo, poor little rich kid.
I know you've been pumping drugs and shit to kids around here. I bet your respectable family would help me out if I went to them. Man, I can see the headlines now.
Leave them out of this bitch.
I can tell everybody Nathan Prescott is a punk ass who begs like a little girl and talks to himself.
You don't know who the fuck I am or who you're messing around with.
Where'd you get that? What are you doing? Come on, put that thing down!
Don't ever tell me what to do. I'm so sick of people trying to control me!
You are going to get in hella more trouble for this than drugs.
Nobody would ever even miss your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away.
Starting Yakuza like a dragon is like starting a really long movie where you have no idea what's happening, but you're too polite to leave. The first few hours are mostly cutscenes, and I was sitting there thinking, when do I get to actually do stuff? Then the game tells me, here's a turn-based RPG, but instead of knights and wizards, you're gonna fight street thugs, giant lobsters, and men dressed as traffic cones. At first I thought I had lost my mind, but then I embraced it. I became one with the chaos. The combat is ridiculously fun, the story is surprisingly deep, and by the end, I was emotionally invested in Ichiban like he was my long-lost brother. Also, shout out to the side quests for being some of the weirdest and funniest things I've ever seen in a game. Who knew I needed to help a guy with a diaper fetish before saving the city?
Cool. Come on now. Check this out. Yeah. You're not ready.
The captain's got that freakish aura around him, and he's in a fighting stance. Gotta be careful.
Cool. Let's rock.
The first few hours of Ghost of Tsushima were beautiful, but I couldn't help feeling like I was stuck in a samurai training montage that refused to end. Okay, I get it. Honor is important. Can I start slicing people yet? The opening is a bit slow, but once the game truly opens up, oh man, it's something else. The combat is so satisfying that I started challenging Mongol camps just for fun. The story builds up to some of the most intense emotional moments I've ever seen in a game, and don't even get me started on that ending. By the time I was done, I wasn't just playing Ghost of Tsushima, I was Jin Sakai. Also, let's take a moment to appreciate how I spent way too much time composing haikus while ignoring the actual war happening around me. Priorities. At the start, The Witcher 3 felt like being dropped into a fantasy world where everyone knew what was going on except me. Who's this Nilfgaard guy, and why does everyone hate him? The combat felt stiff. The inventory system was more confusing than assembling IKEA furniture, and I spent way too much time falling off my horse. But once I powered through the rough beginning, the game clicked. The writing is incredible, the side quests are better than most main quests in other games, and before I knew it, I was deeply invested in Geralt's life. By the end, I wasn't just playing a game, I was living a medieval soap opera filled with monster contracts, political drama, and enough Gwent to start a gambling addiction. Slow start? Sure. But once it gets going, it's one of the best RPGs ever made.
Watch out! It's about to dive!
And that's all 20 games. Hopefully you made it through this list without falling asleep like I did during some of these openings. Let me know which of these games you struggled with at first but ended up loving, and if I forgot any, feel free to call me out in the comments. Just remember, if you insult my choices, I will challenge you to a duel in Elden Ring.